My name is Helen Carter. It happened in our 23rd year of marriage. One day, suddenly, my husband left. What was left was just a piece of letter. And on that letter was just one sentence: "I'm going to live with my lover." I thought it was some kind of joke and waited for my husband to return. But he didn't come home the next morning either. I couldn't reach him, no matter how many times I called. While drowning in the sorrow of being betrayed, 3 years passed. "Mom, it's been 3 years since Dad left. He's not coming back. It's better to divorce and start a new life." It was just a few months ago that I finally decided to get a divorce, persuaded by my daughter. And now, I've completed the divorce and am living with a new mindset. However, I received a voicemail on my phone. "Hey. I'm coming home tonight. Let me stay." My husband, who I couldn't reach no matter how much I tried to contact him, suddenly called and said he was coming home tonight. Just when I've divorced and sorted out my feelings, what is he thinking? His voice on the voicemail, which I replayed over and over, was just as arrogant and selfish as before. Our marriage had started with an arranged meeting. Worried about my inability to find a lover, my parents registered me with a matchmaking agency. Without my knowledge, they arranged a meeting, and I gave in to their insistence to just meet him. When I met him, he seemed refreshing and capable of leading me. I thought he was dependable. Thinking I could feel secure with him was probably due to my lack of experience. After getting married, I realized he was very selfish. The idea of him leading was a misconception. He just wanted to have things his way. When we had a child, my husband started coming home late and became more absorbed in his work. However, I didn't worry too much about it, thinking it was better he was immersed in work than having an affair. Then, in our 23rd year of marriage, he disappeared. Our daughter, who had just started working after graduating from high school at 22, was heartbroken by her father's sudden absence. I felt the same, not knowing what to do after being suddenly abandoned by my husband. Having not worked since our marriage, I didn't know how I would manage to live. The only consolation was that this betrayal happened after our daughter had grown up. If she had still been a child, I wouldn't have been able to raise her alone. In the absence of my husband, the days spent crying felt eternal and unbearably heavy. I spent a year searching for him every day. I even went to his company to ask if he had shown up for work. But he had quit his job without discussing it with me. Finally, a year passed. And I began to come to terms with his absence and started reflecting on myself. Why was I relying on such a selfish person? Why did I think I loved someone like that? He selfishly cheated, ran off to another woman, and abandoned his family. Wherever he is, whatever he's doing, I don't care anymore. It took a year to reach this point. Looking back, I realize what a waste of time it was. But those 23 years seem even more wasteful. If I had known a day would come when he would leave us, I wouldn't have worked so hard for my husband and family. 2 years later, my daughter got married. We had lived supporting each other as a mother and daughter. She said she couldn't leave me and go. "Mom, let's live together." I was surprised and happy to hear her say that, as I had assumed she would leave the house to live with her husband. I had braced myself to be abandoned again, as that's what being a parent meant. But won't he feel suffocated living with me? It's fine. He was the one who suggested we live together. Fearing being alone, I cried and accepted her offer. At the meeting with her fiancé's parents, both of them were there. I felt sad, wondering why I was the only one alone. But it couldn't be helped. Some people lose their husbands early and live in loneliness. I just happened to lose my husband in a different way. I kept smiling, telling myself this, feeling pathetic. Ideally, both parents should attend their daughter's wedding. But in our case only one parent would attend, and I worried my daughter felt out of place. All this was because of my selfish husband. If he had cared about his family, none of this would have happened. Why did he abandon his family for another woman? As time passes, my anger only grows, though it changes nothing. I couldn't forgive him for making my daughter suffer more than his betrayal. Perhaps that's why I decided to divorce. And yet, now this voicemail. What should I do? Should I try calling him? As I stared at my husband's phone number, I considered calling him. But that number, which I had tried calling so many times without a response. What if it doesn't connect again? What if I'm ignored again? After finally making the big decision to divorce, will my heart be disturbed again? Another part of me says, no. I don't want my life disrupted by that man anymore. Well, if it's something important, he'll surely call again, right? I'm not his wife anymore. There's no need for me to worry. After all, he has his lover to care about. Deciding this, I went to my daughter and told her about the voicemail from her father, George. Jessica just nonchalantly said, huh, as selfish as ever, huh? He can stay if he wants, but where does he think he's going to stay? She was right. The apartment where the three of us used to live was long gone. About 3 hours later, while watching my granddaughter draw on my lap, my phone rang. It rarely does, so I wondered who it could be. The screen showed husband. I thought, I forgot to change the name. I put my granddaughter down and went to my room. Hello? Hey. Where are you right now? Excuse me? Don't play dumb. I told you I'm coming home tonight. Didn't you check your messages? I did, but I thought, hasn't he changed at all? After being missing for 3 years, shouldn't an apology be the first thing? And yet, this is how he starts the conversation. I couldn't help but feel glad we separated. Hey. There's no luggage in the room. What's going on? In the room. Where are you right now? At home, obviously. At our old place? Of course. You're inside the room. Obviously. Stop nagging. Why isn't there any luggage in the room? Answer me. Because I moved. What? Why didn't you tell me about the move? You said you were going to live with your lover and didn't respond to any of my messages. Maybe realizing he had dug his own grave, George just said, and fell silent. It was always like this before. When things didn't go his way, he'd go quiet. How can a conversation happen with someone who stops talking? In the past, I always had to be the one to give in. But now, it's different. If he won't talk, I don't need to either. Just then, I heard my son-in-law's voice saying, "The bath is ready, let's go in." He must be talking to my granddaughter. Huh? Where are you? That's my personal information, I don't need to tell you where I am. What? We're married, it's not personal information. Though, unfortunately, we're not married anymore. What are you talking about? Did you lose your mind while I was away? No, it's true. You've been missing for 3 years, so I filed for divorce. Why? Because you. Why are you doing things on your own? On my own. Me? That's right. How could you divorce me without consulting me? How was I supposed to consult you? How can I communicate and consult with someone who's unreachable? I couldn't get in touch with you, didn't know where you were. So I endured for 3 years and finally got my feelings in order. That's why I decided to get a divorce. Even so, that's just too selfish of you. Who's the selfish one? You left with just a note saying you're going to live with your lover. Do you know how much your daughter and I suffered because of that? It's only natural to get a divorce. That's why you're so impulsive. I wrote I was going to live with my lover. But I never wrote anything about getting a divorce. Do you really think that excuse is valid? Just saying you're going to live with a lover is shocking enough. Let alone not contacting after that. Anyone would think that means you want a divorce. No, that's not it. Anyway, you're the one who left. Be happy with your lover. Wait. I broke up with her. What? That's why we can start over. Start over? Yes, I broke up with her and came back to you. You should be grateful. Grateful? Are you joking? Why should I be grateful? Don't be ridiculous. I have no intention of starting over with you. Is it because you have a lover? What? How could you even think that? Don't lump me in with you. It's true, isn't it? I heard a young man's voice earlier. But I'm a generous man. Even if you played around with a young man, I'll forgive you this time. You must be lonely running to such a man, but you're just being played, aren't you? How foolish can you be? What did you say? I'm telling you I'm forgiving you. That voice earlier was my daughter's husband. What? She got married? Yes. So, you're living with your daughter and her husband? Yes, and my granddaughter too. Are you happy? Of course. Being with my adorable granddaughter all the time is the greatest happiness. Why? What? Why do you get to be happy when I've lost everything? What? You chose to leave for another woman, you should be happier. That's not it. What happened, then? Since you're here, why don't you tell me everything in order? Why did you suddenly disappear? What kind of woman fell in love with you? 3 years ago, I was drinking at an izakaya. She was sitting next to me, and we hit it off as we drank together. After several meals together, it got serious. She said she was serious about me. When I tried to go home, she cried and said she wanted to be with me all the time. So you decided to live together with her? Yes, exactly. How old was she? In her late 30s. You were involved with someone so young. Yeah. Compared to an old wife, everything was fresh and exciting. When she said she wanted to be with me, how could I feel bad? So, you abandoned your family for a woman more than 20 years younger? Yes, so what? Then you should have stayed with her if you liked her that much. No, she found another man. Oh, what a shame. He was younger and stronger than me. I never thought she would leave me. She took everything and ran off. Her letter just said, I found someone I love. I couldn't believe it. So, I waited for days, but she never came back. Not after 1 month, not even after 2. Finally, after 3 months, I realized waiting was useless. Birds of a feather, huh? What do you mean? Leaving just a piece of letter. Yeah, I thought we were alike. But waiting for someone who ran away is useless. That's when I thought of you. I figured you must be waiting for me. You really are delusional. It took me a year to get over you. You mean you waited a year for me? A wishful thinking. It took a year to finally move on. Hey, you wouldn't abandon me too, right? I didn't abandon you, I divorced you because you left. I have nowhere to live. I lost my job, I don't know what to do. You chose that yourself, right? You resigned. Well, I did choose to quit. For that woman, right? Yes, I loved her. I thought we'd live together somewhere else. The job was in the way. You reap what you sow. What are you saying? Do you think you did nothing wrong? What? You neglected me. Even when I was late because of work, you didn't care. You never noticed I was cheating. You were always focused on the child. That's why I went to another woman. It's all your fault. Is that so? Well, then there's no need to be with such a terrible woman. Good thing we divorced. No, that's not it. I realized you're the best after all. Too late for realizations. We're already divorced. If we're divorced, we can just remarry. Don't be ridiculous. I have no intention of getting back together with you. Not even a hair's breadth. Why? I have nowhere to live. Find a place to live. It's easier to just live with you. I refuse. I won't let a stranger like you into my house. Mom, dinner's ready. Oh, my daughter is calling. Dinner is ready, so I'm hanging up. Can we talk again after dinner? No, we watch TV with the family after dinner. It's more fun watching TV with my granddaughter than alone. What? It's unfair that you're the only one happy. I ignored George's yelling and hung up the phone. When I went to the living room and told my daughter about George, she showed obvious anger but had nothing to say. However, the next day, George contacted my daughter, Jessica. Jessica, it's your dad. Who did you say? It's your dad. I heard you got married. Congratulations. Are you happy? I heard from your mom you have a granddaughter. Let me see my grandchild's face. Are you joking? What? To my husband, I said you disappeared. What are you planning by showing up now? Well, you have a mistress, right? Just stay happy with her. I broke up with her. Young mistresses are fickle, you know. How old was she? In her late 30s.
Ew.
That's creepy. What? Falling for such a young woman and even quitting your job, aren't you stupid? Just don't come here, I don't want to see you. Hey, we're still family, aren't we? Mom and you are divorced, didn't she tell you?
Yeah.
I heard. Then you should understand. You and I are now strangers. And my father disappeared 3 years ago. Do you know how hard it was when my father abandoned me? And all for a woman in her late 30s. Just stop being so ridiculous. I couldn't help it. She didn't want to leave me. Oh, how nice for you. Thanks to that, Mom suffered alone. She looked for you everywhere, walked around every day. Went to your company only to find out you had quit. Do you understand how much that shocked her? I kind of. I was a mess too. Even when I found someone I liked, I was scared I'd be abandoned again. And that's all your fault. Well, I had a hard time too. You chose that path yourself. We had to walk the path we didn't choose. I should have had both my parents at my wedding, but Mom had to attend alone. And I felt out of place. But you're happy now, aren't you? Running off to a young woman and leaving your family is just irresponsible. The only good thing was that I was an adult. If not, Mom would have had to bear all the hardships alone. I waited until you were an adult. I thought about it, you know. Someone who thinks wouldn't abandon their family. Stop making excuses. Well, I do feel bad about it. It's too late now. Hey, I want to apologize. Tell me your address. Just because you apologize now, it doesn't change anything. I never once forgot about you, you know. Then please forget me. I've long since forgotten about you. That's cold-hearted, isn't it? You made it that way, didn't you? So, it was that woman who made you like this. That woman? Your mother. She must have spoken ill of me. That's why you're saying such things. You weren't like this before. Jessica thought for a moment after hearing George's words. Where are you living now? Huh? In the apartment we used to live in. Did you rent it? No, I don't have the money for that. I still had the key. So I just picked up some cardboard boxes and have been staying there. It's better than outside in the cold. So, no one has moved in there since Mom moved out? Seems like it. Lucky, huh? Is it really empty? There's nothing there, so it must be empty. Why? That means it's property of the real estate agency.
Yeah.
Aren't you worried about getting in trouble? The real estate people hardly ever come to check. I should be okay. You're not going to leave? I can't, really. That's why I want to live with you. You understand, right? So, you'll stay there for a while?
Yeah.
Unless you let me stay with you. I can't really sleep outside, it's too cold. But it's cold here too. A blanket would help, the cardboard alone is not enough. You're really still there?
Yeah.
I have no other choice. That's why I want to stay at your place. Just give me your address and I'll come over. What's with hanging up suddenly? Such lack of manners. A few days later, I received a call from a lawyer. Apparently, George had been arrested for illegal trespassing. He had entered the apartment we used to live in without permission, and was sleeping on cardboard boxes surrounded by empty cans and a terrible smell. The real estate agency noticed the lights on in the supposedly empty apartment, and found George there, leading to his arrest. George requested a public defender and asked for me and Jessica to visit him. So, Jessica and I went to the police station. Seeing George for the first time in 3 years, he looked much thinner. Why did you end up like this? Well, the real estate people suddenly showed up. You knew we didn't live there anymore. So you should have known you couldn't enter that apartment. But I had nowhere else to stay, and it's too cold outside. There are cheap inns, aren't there? It's a waste of money. But you can afford beer, huh? Alcohol is the best way to stay warm. You'll freeze to death. It's not cold enough to freeze to death. And why were we called here? You're a stranger to us now. Don't say that. You're the only ones I can rely on. When we were in trouble, you were nowhere to be found. You're incredibly selfish. But if you had let me stay with you, none of this would have happened. I asked many times. Asked? When? You demanded to stay, but never politely asked. Why should I have to say such things? I worked hard for both of you all my life. Why should I have to bow down now? Is that so? Well, then. Wait. Don't be hasty. If we lived together, I could have thought of something. What would you have thought of? Finding another woman? Not that. Well, there's no use arguing over what's done. It might be over for you, but not for us. You showed up and disrupted our peace. I'm disturbed too. It's not just you. How are you disturbed? Did we do that to you, or did you bring it upon yourself? Enough. I didn't call you to argue. I'm not here to argue. Arguing with a stranger is pointless. So, Dad, why did you call us here? Well, actually, the real estate agency said they would consider a settlement. Good for you. But if it's just small talk, we don't need to hear it. Let's go, Mom. No, wait. Listen to me. I'm busy. I'm going shopping with Mom for my daughter's clothes. We don't have time to play with you. Play? Listen, I'll just say it. I need you to cover the settlement money. Do you understand what he's saying, Mom? I don't get it. Why would we lend money to a stranger like George? I wouldn't lend it either. Why should we lend money to someone who doesn't work properly? Don't be like that. If I can pay the settlement, they'll drop the case. How much is it? $2,000. And if you don't pay? It'll go to court. And if it goes to court? Probably a fine or jail time. How much would the fine be? Less than $1,000, they said. So, going to court is cheaper, huh? I don't have even that $1,000. The agency, considering my situation, said $2,000 would be enough. Still double the fine, huh?
Yeah.
So can you lend me $2,000? I have a child, you know. I need money for my child, not for you. Is that so? Helen, what about you? You can afford it, right? Are you joking? After being abandoned by you, how do you think I've been living? I don't have extra money like that. Don't say that, just borrow it from somewhere for me. Why should I borrow money for you? I'd have to repay the debt, right? That's impossible. I'll repay it once I'm out. Then why don't you ask your young lover? I told you, I broke up with her. But she's closer to you than your ex-wife, isn't she? After all, we're strangers now. Don't say that, I'm begging you. Helen. No chance. Leaving the visitation room. My daughter and I were followed by the desperate calls of my ex-husband. Despite his arrogance and selfishness, and neglecting his family, he was eventually abandoned by his mistress too. Then I wondered why the real estate agency showed up so timely. My daughter grinned and said to me, "A little revenge like this won't hurt, right?" Turns out, she had contacted the real estate agency. George, after facing trial, received a 3-year sentence with a public defender who showed little enthusiasm. He served his sentence without incident and was released. But freedom was far from what he expected. At 58 years old, with a criminal record, he couldn't find a job. Unable to afford an apartment, he ended up as a homeless. George kept contacting me, wanting to get back together. I've been released. I've truly changed. Let's start over. Marry me again, please. There's no love in this, right? Love doesn't matter. We were married before, that's enough, isn't it? I have no intention of entering a loveless marriage. What's gotten into you? As a wife, you should help your struggling husband. That led me to ultimately block him. After that, he lived a transient life, doing day labor, and eventually became homeless. Meanwhile, I lived with my daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter, enjoying a life filled with smiles and happiness.